Good day, friends. Welcome to my episode on personality disorders. So, let me go ahead and preface this by saying I am not a trained or even professionally educated individual, and this is all my own research that I do prior to doing my videos. And so, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and provide some links for not only reference but as well as videos with similar content, so that if you guys want to do a little bit more of your own education, there's an avenue. And I also just want to raise my awareness as well as yours. So, what I've kind of retained about a personality disorder is it's basically a type of mental disorder in which you have a rigid and unhealthy pattern of thinking, functioning, and even behaving. So a person with a personality disorder usually has trouble kind of perceiving a situation or relating to a situation and people in a manner that isn't guided by emotional protection or fulfillment. And, this can cause significant problems and limitations in relationships, social activities, work, and even school if left untreated. Now I'm going to share with you guys how clevelandclinic.org went about defining, personality disorders. So personality is vital in defining who we are as individuals. It involves a unique blend of traits, including attitudes, thoughts, behaviors, and moods, as well as how we express these traits in our contacts with other people in the world around us. So some of these characteristics of an individual's personality are inherited, and some are shaped by life's events and experiences. A personality disorder can develop if certain personality traits become too rigid and inflexible. And some people with personality disorders have long-standing patterns of thinking and acting that differ from what society considers usual or normal. And the inflexibility of their personality can cause great distress and can interfere with many areas of life, including social and work functioning. People with personality disorders generally also have poor coping skills and difficulty forming healthy relationships. And, unlike people with anxiety disorders who know they have a problem but are unable to control it, people with personality disorders generally are not aware that they have a problem and do not believe they have anything to control, because they do not believe they have a disorder. People with personality disorders often do not seek treatment on their own. So, how common are personality disorders? Well, personality disorders are among the most common of the severe mental disorders and often occur alongside other mental illnesses such as substance abuse disorders, mood disorders like depression and bipolar disorder, and even anxiety disorders. It's estimated that about 10 to 13% of the world's population suffer from some form of personality disorder. Now, most personality disorders begin in the teen years, when the personality further develops and matures. As a result, almost all people diagnosed with personality disorders are above the age of 18. And some personality disorders, such as borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder, are more common in women, and others, such as Antisocial Personality Disorder and Obsessive-Compulsive Personality Disorder, are more common in men. Many people in prison also have a diagnosable personality disorder. So in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or the DSM-5, it actually organizes personality disorders into three main categories, with several types of personality disorders in each category. All in all, there are actually 10 diagnosable personality disorders, or PDs. These categories are called cluster PDs because a lot of the symptomatic patterns tend to overlap, as seen kind of in this diagram here. And then so we'll start off with cluster A disorders. They are kind of an example of someone who's usually involved in awkwardness in social situations. They kind of have a distorted, almost unrealistic style of thinking, and they kind of distance themselves from society and relationships. And so with cluster A personality disorders, they're also kind of characterized by odd or eccentric thinking or behavior. They include paranoid personality disorder, schizoid personality disorder, and schizotypal personality disorder. Say that 3 times fast. So with paranoid personality disorder, these people tend to get a lot of like pervasive distrust and suspicion of others and their motives. They kind of have unjustified beliefs that others are trying to harm them or deceive you. They also have unjustified suspicions of loyalty or trustworthiness of others, hesitancy to confide in others due to unreasonable fear that others will use the information against them, maybe the perception of innocent remarks or non-threatening situations as personal insults or attacks, angry or hostile reactions to perceived slights or insults, and they have a tendency to hold grudges. They also have an unjustified recurrent suspicion that spouse or sexual partner is being unfaithful. With schizoid personality disorder, there's a lack of interest in social settings or personal relationships, kind of preferring to be solitary. And they tend to express a limited range of emotions, and they have an inability to take pleasure in most activities, or even an inability to pick up normal cues. And they kind of have the appearance of being cold or indifferent to others, with really little or no interest in having sex with another person. With schizotypal personality disorder, we see kind of a peculiar dress, thinking, beliefs, speech, or even behavior. They kind of have an odd perceptual experience, such as hearing a voice whisper your name. They tend to have an expression of flat emotions or inappropriate emotional responses. And they are usually accompanied with social anxiety and a lack of or discomfort with close relationships. And they're pretty indifferent, inappropriate, or they have suspicious responses to others. And then they also have kind of a distorted reality, kind of a magical thinking, believing you can influence people and events with your thoughts, or even beliefs that certain casual incidents or events have hidden messages meant only for you. Now, I bet you'll never guess what follows up right after cluster A personality disorders. It's pretty clever. It's cluster B personality disorders. And they're pretty much characterized by dramatic or overly emotional or even unpredictable thinking or behavior. They include Antisocial Personality Disorder, Borderline Personality Disorder, Histrionic Personality Disorder, and Narcissistic Personality Disorder. These types of PDs are commonly associated with individuals of sociopathic or psychopathic behaviors. These are often developed as a result of living in survival mode for most of the individual's young life. While this can seem intimidating, and no one really wants to be called something we've associated with killers in movies, and unfortunately in real life, these conditions are treatable with therapy and even some medication treatment. From what I understand, not from personal diagnosis, but by interacting with individuals with these conditions, is they're often dealing with things and ways their brains help them to in order to survive traumatic events and even life as a child. It's really an unfortunate byproduct that these individuals must treat regularly. But have hope. They are treatable. The first of cluster B PDs is Antisocial Personality Disorder. And this personality disorder tends to have individuals who have a disregard for others' needs or feelings. There's persistent lying, stealing, and using aliases, conning others. They usually have reoccurring problems with the law, repeated violations of rights in others, and even aggressive or often violent behavior. They tend to have a disregard for the safety of their self and others around them. And that's usually happens through impulsive behavior or being consistently irresponsible or even having a lack of remorse for their behavior. Then there's BPD, or Borderline Personality Disorder. This is usually an individual who's impulsive or has risky behavior, such as having unsafe sex or gambling or even binge eating. They tend to have kind of an unstable, fragile self-image that also impacts them with kind of creating unstable and even intense relationships. They often have up and down moods, seen as a reaction to interpersonal stress or even suicidal behavior or threats of self-injury. They often have a very intense fear of being alone or abandoned, and they constantly deal with ongoing feelings of emptiness. There's also at times frequent intense displays of anger and even stress-related paranoia that comes and goes. With Histrionic Personality Disorder, we see a attention-seeking individual who is excessively emotional or dramatic or even sexually provocative and means to gain attention. They speak dramatically with strong opinions, but often have few facts to detail or back them up. And these individuals tend to be easily influenced by others and often have really shallow or rapidly changing emotions. For the most part, they tend to express a excessive concern with physical appearance and even think relationships with others are closer than they really are. Now, NPD, or Narcissistic Personality Disorder. So with this PD, it's kind of the belief that you're special and more important than others. These individuals often fantasize about power, success, and attractiveness. They have a failure to recognize other needs and feelings. They often have an exaggeration of their achievements or talents, or expectations of constant praise and admiration. Also, a staple personality trait is arrogance. They often have unreasonable expectations of favors and advantages, and often taking advantage of others. And they envy others, or believe that others envy you. And that's kind of their dominating mentality. Now, would you believe me if I told you, after Cluster B personality disorders, there were Cluster C personality disorders? Well, you guessed it. So, these people, they often seem very agitated, or agitated by, agitated of, or elusive of everyday challenges and situations. Most of the time, the predominant emotion and actions are actually done out of fear, or a fear response, or even a desire to be in control of situations. These are people who often act on impulse to avoid rejection, abandonment, or even failure in activities or projects. They tend to find ways to ground themselves through either people, repetition, or doubts to even prevent themselves from feeling the feelings of fear and failure. So what are Cluster C PDs? Terrible police department name. It's also individuals who are characterized by anxiety, fearful thinking, or behavior. These actually include Avoidant Personality Disorder, Dependent Personality Disorder, and OCD, or Obsessive-Compulsive Personality Disorder. With Avoidant Personality Disorder, these individuals tend to be really sensitive to criticism or rejection. They often have feelings of inadequacy or feel inferior or unattractive. They tend to avoid work activities that require interpersonal contact, or they're socially inhibited because of timid behavior and being isolated, avoiding new activities or meeting strangers. They often tend to have extreme shyness in social situations and even in personal relationships. And they also struggle with fear of disapproval, embarrassment, or even ridicule. Now, guys, don't leave just yet. We're just getting to dependent personality disorder. Dependent personality disorder it's an excessive dependence on others and feeling the need to be taken care of. These individuals are often very submissive or express clingy behavior towards others. And this is because they have a fear of having to provide self-care or even fend for themselves on their own. They tend to lack self-confidence, requiring excessive advice and reassurance from others to even make small decisions. And this causes them to have a difficulty in starting or doing projects on their own due to lack of self-confidence. And in social settings, they tend to have difficulty disagreeing with others, fearing disapproval, and often have a high tolerance of poor or abusive treatment, even when other options are available. And they tend to have an urgent need to start a new relationship when a close one has ended. This clip I had to do like 1,000,000 times, and I still can't get it right. But it's about OCD, or Obsessive-Compulsive Personality Disorder, which tends to be a preoccupation with details, orderliness, and even rules. It tends to present itself as extreme perfectionism, resulting in dysfunction and distress when perfection is not achieved. These will cause you to have such feelings as being unable to finish a project because you don't meet your own strict standards. And these individuals tend to desire to be in control of people, tasks, situations, and have an inability to delegate tasks. They often kind of neglect their friends and enjoyable activities because of excessive commitment to work or a project. And they have an inability to really discard broken or worthless things, often coming off as rigid or stubborn. Other things they are kind of associated with are being inflexible about morality, ethics, or values. And they're also known to be financially tight or miserly, with control over budgeting and spending money. Now, I actually got this information from mayoclinic.org. Miracle Whip has another article, but it's not as tasty, or I'm sorry, entertaining. But anyways, so what causes personality disorders? Well, research suggests that genetics, abuse, and other factors contribute to the development of OCD or NPD or other personality disorders. In the past, some people believed that people with PDs were just lazy or even evil. But new research has kind of begun to explore such potential causes as genetics, parenting, or even peer influences. With genetics, it's crazy. Researchers are actually beginning to identify some possible genetic factors behind PDs. One team, for instance, has identified a malfunctioning gene that may cause to be a factor in OCD. And other researchers are exploring genetic links to aggression, anxiety, and fear, traits that can play a role in PDs. Another factor is childhood trauma. Findings from one of the largest studies of PDs, the Collaborative Longitudinal Personality Disorder Study, it offers clues about the roles of childhood experiences. One study actually found a link between the number and type of childhood traumas and the development of personality disorders. People with borderline personality disorder, for example, have especially high rates of childhood sexual trauma. Another factor in developing PDs is verbal abuse. Even verbal abuse can have an impact. In a study of 793 mothers and children, researchers asked mothers if they had screamed with their child, or told them that they didn't love them, or even threatened to send them away. And children who had experienced such verbal abuse were 3 times as likely as other children to have borderline, narcissistic, OCD, or paranoid personality disorders in adulthood. Another thing that kind of plays a factor in these developments is high reactivity. Sensitivity to light, noise, texture, and other stimuli may also play a role. This is especially apparent in overly sensitive children who have what researchers call high reactivity. They're often more likely to develop shy, timid, or even anxious personalities. However, high reactivity's role is still far from clear-cut. About 20% of infants are highly reactive, but less than 10% go on to develop social phobias. And last but not least important, peers. Peers can play certain factors that either help prevent developing personality disorders or can even further it along, depending on what that friend's motivations are. But even a strong relationship with a relative, teacher, or friend can offset a lot of these negative influences. Now, the factor research was actually done by apa.org, and I've actually put the link in here so you guys can do a little bit more research if you're curious or you're thinking about conceiving. Definitely something to look into because at the end of the day, we do become our child's voice. And I would rather get in front of my voices so that they don't have to hear them later in their life. Now, I went back to clevelandclinic.org to do a little bit more research. And, they kind of looked into how PDs are treated. Generally, people with personality disorders might not seek out treatment on their own. And as a result, they go untreated. One reason for the failure to seek treatment might be that many people with personality disorders can function normally in society outside of the limitations of their disorder. But most personality disorders are constant and unrelenting and very hard to cure. However, treatment can help relieve some of the disturbing symptoms of many types of personality disorders. This treatment varies depending on the type of disorder. But psychotherapy, which is a type of counseling, is the main form of treatment. In some cases, medication might be used to treat extreme or disabling symptoms that might occur. Medications that might be used include antidepressants, antipsychotics, anti-anxiety drugs, and impulse-stabilizing medications. And then with psychotherapy, it really focuses on evaluating, faulty thinking patterns and teaching new thinking and behavior patterns. Therapy also aims to improve coping and interpersonal skills. But what are some of the complications of personality disorders? Untreated personality disorders can result in great personal and social costs, including, loss of productivity, hospitalizations, significant unhappiness, and even imprisonment. A lot of people with untreated personality disorders are also at risk for alcohol or drug abuse, and even violent or self-destructive behaviors such as suicide. So let's talk about prevention. Can personality disorders be prevented? Well, it looks like at this time there is not really a known way to prevent PDs, but many of the related problems might be lessened with treatment. Seeking help as soon as symptoms appear can really help decrease the disruption to the person's life, family, and relationships. And if you were to be diagnosed with a personality disorder, what's the prognosis? It's really difficult to accurately assess the outlook because people with personality disorders often do not follow the treatment recommendations. But there you have it, guys. Now personality disorders they're not like clothes where you get to try one on and decide if you like it or not. They're pretty much wired into our subconscious as they have worked in an individual's favor in the past. But you can rewire your brain through intention and repetition. You have all you need within you to start the process of overcoming your struggles with the help of professionals, medication or self-care practices. You can even start today by sitting in silence for just 5 minutes and listening to your thoughts. They aren't true unless you've seen them play out. Remember that. And remember, guys, don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. We usually don't get into this mess by ourselves, but there are people who can help us get out. Be sure to build support groups, be connected, and hold yourself accountable. Not only to others, but to your recovery. This is the rest of our lives we're talking about. Guys, I believe in you. And I believe in change. And I believe in empowering those to better themselves through knowledge. To change your behaviors, you just have to start in the mind first. Doing it every day. That's the hard part. And with that, thank you for letting me sit here with you and share my process of education on matters of the mind. I hope I can benefit your process. And as always, guys, I'm here today because I'm hoping to see you tomorrow. I'll see you guys next week.